Hi, welcome to Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside my colleague Drew Bonifant. Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I am good. Our guest this week is Tom Bertrand, head coach at Maine Central Institute. Coach, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It is now regional semifinal week. Coach, your team is coming off a nice win at Nokomis and getting ready for a tough opponent in Winslow. First, talk about how this first year in Class C has gone for you guys.
No, it's been a good season, lots of lessons learned, and again, we didn't know how we were going to fare in Class C. We hope to be competitive, and we have been. We've learned some lessons, and we've had some good battles with some really good football teams in this league.
Coach, Winslow obviously has a long history of success in these playoff games, and championships to their credit and everything. And I was wondering, is that almost half the battle when you're playing a team like that? Is getting over the prestige and getting over playing Winslow? And do you think that your team with the championship last year and 2 straight chips there kind of has more to match up to?
Well, when you think of teams like Winslow, they have the tradition that we're trying to build at MCI.
Mm-hmm.
You do that comes with some prestige, as you said. So, regardless, we heard that we'd heard that they might be down a little bit this year, and my comment to that is a down year for Winslow is a good year for most of us. So I don't see that they're down at all. And again, a program like Winslow is one that a lot of programs want to emulate. So, so yeah, there's that factor, but definitely we came off last year with something to prove that we could compete in Class C, and I think our kids have done a great job responding.
You played them just a couple weeks ago. This is your second matchup with them in 3 weeks. They got you 32-29 at your place. When you play a team like basically on top of each other like that, what can you gather?
We did some good things. We made some mistakes. They did a lot of good things against us, and we know now what they do well and where they might be a little bit weaker, and the same for them towards us. So I think when you play a team and it's so recent, it's helpful because you don't have a lot of those games in between.
Right.
You can refer back to it and say, we're still talking about the Winslow game, throughout the next couple of weeks. So it's still fairly fresh to us, and we have referred back to film and the different things that we do with our scout, but it's fresh in our mind about what we wanted to do in that game that we didn't accomplish.
Different than playing a team in a rematch of a game that was like in early September, for example.
Yeah, I mean that's the case it was with Nokomis.
Right.
We played them early on, and then we knew that the second time around they'd improved a lot, and we were a lot different as well. So that's the biggest difference, I would say, is it's been so recent.
Similar styles between you and Winslow with the power running game that's been working well for each team. Do you expect more of that this week, just going at each other and see what happens on the line?
I got to believe they're going to keep doing what they do. They've been successful at it, and we've found our niche. We've been looking for it all year. We go spread, we go eye. We went some wishbone last week. We've gone to the power eye, and it just seems that right now what's working well for us is that power running game, and that's what we plan to do on Saturday.
It's neat seeing. I haven't seen wishbone since I was in high school 27 years ago, so it's kind of neat to see teams incorporate some of that old stuff back.
Yeah, and again, it's just a matter of getting a different number of guys the ball and not featuring one guy. We've got a bunch of guys that can handle the football for us and finding ways to do that.
Is there something to being week 2 of the playoffs? You kind of like get that feeling of getting your playoff football legs under you and everything versus going into the game against Nokomis last week. Is there just more when you're looking at the game last week, kind of okay, we're going to be up for this playoff atmosphere? Are we ready for this? And versus now, maybe not. That's not on the mind so much. You guys know you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about having 2 seasons. A lot of teams, you end up playing 2 actual football seasons sometimes when you go through. You incorporate the preseason and everything else into it. And when it gets to this time of the year, it gets to be a little bit grueling, but it's also we're very aware that we're fortunate to be one of the few teams left playing. So you take full advantage of that. You don't take it for granted. But it is do or die time, playoffs, and your seniors are thinking about things in those contexts. And having one of my own, once again, is those things are always on your mind. But the goal has been established for us. The bar has been set, and that's what we're hoping for, is to continue to achieve for the ultimate goal.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, your team, Coach, has had some success in recent years, going to 3 consecutive Class D state championship games, winning it last year. another playoff year this year. A lot of teams around the state, though, are still struggling with numbers. And a story that was in our colleague paper, the Portland Press-Herald, this week was the issue of maybe 8-man football was brought up again in Maine. I remember at the meetings last year when the football schools around the state were trying to determine classification. It was brought up a couple times, and the reaction that the coaches and people in football around the state gave were not really in favor of it. Your team before this recent run had some struggles with numbers and struggling to get some wins. Is 8-man something that you could see some schools embracing as I don't want to call it last ditch resort, but as a way to build up their programs? And it would have been something that you guys would have been interested in 6 or 7 years ago.
Well, there's a couple of questions there. One is
threw a ton at you.
Well, no, but is it a model that can work? I don't know. I'm not familiar with it. I think that if there's support for it within a mass of teams, and there's a place for it, then that group of teams might make it work. I looked on my Facebook page, and we traveled to Dexter one year with 17 kids suited and played. Wow. And I wouldn't be in favor of going to 8-man football at MCI. I think we would probably have the discussion about whether or not football is right for us. Now, that's just me at MCI. But I do understand the concept is one that's been adopted in other states and has worked with different levels of success. But I don't know if that's the next step for us or not. I think just that there's a lot of teams that are going to have to make that decision about whether or not football is a fit for them. And I can completely understand fighting tooth and nail to the very end and wanting to hold on. So, because once you lose football in your community, it definitely makes a change, and it's going to be hard to get back. So, I can appreciate those communities that are trying to keep football together, and what they've done with the developmental league is a step in that direction of saving football. And you can be criticized. It can be criticized, and it can be championed, and it all depends on where you're at. Sitting where we are, it might be easy for us to be judging that, but where we were, 7-8 years ago, where we were traveling with those numbers, we might have been in a different position having that conversation.
Drew, have you ever seen 8-man football?
I haven't. And one of the things I was wondering when we broached the topic was how much of it is just kind of a aesthetic complaint. Well, we don't want to change. We don't want to change. It's like when people talk about not wanting to go to 7-inning baseball games or something. It's just like it's just not the way we're used to playing it, not the way we're brought up to play it. We don't want to make that drastic a change. Or if it's more functional, like say there are some people who, I know this 8-man is to protect the roster as a whole, but if there are some players in these teams who maybe want to play football later on, if they're good enough to be that playing in college might be an option if that hurts their chances to be playing a vastly different game. I don't know if there have been from those discussions that you've heard if that's which one is kind of the complaint that people or the reason people generally go to for why they're not so enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, my thought was a lot of it is tradition, and it's like almost if we go to 8-man, we're admitting defeat. I don't think that's the case, but I can see how that perception is out there. And as for the rules, I'm not sure. I know it's a more wide open game. Coach, have you ever seen it?
I've not seen it.
It seems like it'd be
I've not. We
a lot more room to work.
We were playing 7-man football with our youth program early on, where we were playing in-house, where we had some real basic things going on, and I can see how the game would be changed a lot. You'd coach it a completely different way when you eliminate those number of players, but I'm not familiar with it much at all.
Yeah, I can imagine some of those subtle rule changes are there, but I can't imagine it's that much different. I think at its core, it's still football.
Yeah, again, it's how you want to play it. You talk to the coaches who do the 7-on-7 leagues in the off season, and they're just like, no, this. And you say, well, what can you learn in the summer that you can then take for the fall? And they go, not that much. It's just so different. You're basically just
you find out if you have a kid who can sling it or not.
But 8-on-8 wouldn't look like the 7-on-7 in the preseason here. Wouldn't be obviously full contact and everything. So you don't know how much different the game would look under those guidelines.
Well, the issue of struggling programs isn't going away in Maine. It's going to be around for a while. It's been around for a while. How the schools and the Maine Principal Association tackle it, we'll have to see. Let's look at now some other football games coming up this weekend in the area, beginning with the Pine Tree Conference Class B. Drew, we have One, a rematch of a game from just a couple weeks ago, Brunswick at Lawrence. That was a 23-20 Lawrence win. And the other, Brewer at Skowhegan, one of those rare games where they did not meet in the regular season.
Yeah, and and we talked at length in some of these shows about Brunswick being that dangerous team, and Brewers is that kind of the same mold.
Sure.
They were at 500 this season, but a lot of close losses, a lot of losses to good teams, Class A teams. So Skowhegan and Lawrence wouldn't want to be walking into this taking these games lightly. You know they're not going to be taking them lightly, but then again, Skowhegan brings the best passing attack and definitely the PTC. I don't know if in all of Class B into this game, that'll be a good matchup. Brewers more traditionally ground heavy, and Lawrence has just been on average one of the best teams in the PTC all season. So those could be two close games. I mean, have you kind of thought about how they might shake out in terms of those?
Well, Brunswick and Lawrence have a playoff history with each other. In the last, I think, 8 or 9 years, this will be the fourth time they've met. Brunswick has won all three of the previous. Once in Brunswick a couple years ago, 2013, in the regional final, and then in semifinals and quarterfinals at Kai's Field, where this game's going to be played. Brunswick always seems to have something up their sleeves. They've had a couple successful halfback passes in these games. They had a couple fake punts last week against Coney that turned out to be big plays for them. One for a score, I believe.
Yeah.
Coach, in the playoffs, is it time to just empty the playbook? Do you ever come up with a play and go, all right, we're going to save this for the right moment in the playoffs?
No, you do. You have those in the bag, and you build them as you go, and you see stuff you like and want to try. And it is one of those in terms of preparation, something where you want to make sure you've got everything in that bag that you need. Yeah. So they all start to come out here and there. I mean, we've gone through our gadget plays and the things we need to do on our kickoff return and anything we can do to give our kids an advantage. So I don't know that it's part of the game planning, but it is one of those no holds barred kind of situations where you got to leave it on the line.
And you're playing a team, Winslow. I think you might have even been on the staff one year when they pulled a trick play out in the state championship game against York. The hitch and pitch play.
Oh, yes. Yep.
That went for a touchdown and kind of changed momentum of the game. I know Coach Savitsky, who's been doing this for a long time, is quite the mastermind when it comes to these kind of plays.
He does it with a calm confidence. He doesn't get rattled very easily. But yes, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, Coach Bertrand was on the Winslow staff for 1 year before he went on to MCI, and that was a pretty good state game, if I remember.
It was, and what a year it was. Great people down there, and had a great year down there at Winslow, and learned a lot from those coaches down there.
Yeah. And Brewer Skowhegan is a rematch of a playoff game a couple years ago that was one of the better in the state that year. Brewer won 16-15, put together a near 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter to score the winning touchdown with 11 seconds left. It's just one of those games where Skowhegan just couldn't get their defense off the field in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's pretty much Brewer's style, just ground. Yeah, and then Skowhegan is a little different, more throw.
Yeah, Skowhegan will just score quickly and hope that they can get a few stops because they haven't had the luck doing that this year. A lot of high-scoring games for the Indians. Drew, Class C South, a big game for Gardner going to number 1 Levitt.
Yeah, I mean, the way Levitt has scored this season, they have a terrific offense. They're able to run the ball. They're able to throw the ball. Tim Albert has had one of the better seasons, probably in the state from the quarterback position for Levitt. Bradley Moreau, Oren Shaw are a good running back and wide receiver for them respectively. But Gardner kind of had the answers when they played the first time. 19-7 game. It was close up until the end, and that's kind of been Gardner's MO. There have been very few teams to come in and run them off the field. They play tough defense. They play physical. They hit. They fly to the ball. They're especially good against teams that are lighter and throw more. And Levitt seems to be more in that mix rather than a team like Brewer that we're talking about, just line up and grind it out. So, I mean, Levitt should have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to come into this game and do what they do, but Gardner should have a lot of confidence that they can come in, make this a game, keep close, and then be in position to maybe make a play for the upset in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Gardner, a team that was losing a lot of close games earlier in the season, struggled a little bit midseason, then found their way with a couple big wins, including a win over rival Coney in the last game of the regular season, and then come back with another win over Morse last week.
And that Morse game was right right in line with that, where Gardner was Morse had kind of the run of play the whole time, but Gardner was the first team to put points on the board, held the lead, and Morse finally broke through in the fourth, took the lead because they scored and went for two. And the beginning of the season, that may have been where Gardner didn't make that up, and then that goes in the book as another close loss. They come down, they get a touchdown on the next drive. Joe White said after the game, we were making plays to lose games early. Now we're making plays to win games. Guys feel they can win games. Guys think that they're part of a winning team now. So that confidence will goes a long way, and it will be especially important in a game against the team that's able to do what the Hornets can do.
Right. And in Class D South, we have number 2 Madison hosting a Winthrop Monmouth team coming off a big upset win at Lisbon in the first round.
Yeah, and they've changed their attack. They were trying to get the ground game going early in the season, and it just wasn't working. They tried to get it through the quarterback with Keegan Choate running. They tried to do it Abram Soroyce in the ground, and they just couldn't get that consistency. They started to go through the air more, and now they're able to move. They've been moving the ball, scoring points. Greg Faye's come on as a good receiver for them. Ryan Baird's come on as a good receiver for them. Does it equal what Madison can do? That's kind of the question, because I don't know how many teams can match up to what Madison brings, at least at Class D.
Yeah, few have. Madison won their first game in the season against Winthrop Monmouth, week 3 actually, 47-8. It was 47-0 until Winthrop Monmouth scored a late touchdown. Winthrop Monmouth's game plan that day was to try to grind out long drives and keep the ball out of Madison's strong offense hands. It didn't work. I imagine the game plan's going to be much the same. They can't score if they don't have the ball. Maybe Winthrop Monmouth has better personnel without the injuries this time around to maybe pull that off.
You wonder if they kind of go for that middle ground where you don't want to go totally in ball control, keep them off the field, because then you're kind of feeding towards the start of the season, relying on the ground game that wasn't working out as well. So a mix of that, but also trusting that you're going to have to kind of go toe-to-toe with them, and move the ball down on some drives, throw the ball, get it going through the air. Don't try to get so much in a skill player for skill player battle with them, but can do a little bit of both, because they're going to need to score some points to hang with them in this game.
Sure. Coach, you're in a situation where your rematch is against a team that beat you, but they didn't dominate the game. It was close throughout. Have you ever been in a situation where your rematch is against a team that just beat you up and down the field, and you've got to try to figure out ways to change that?
Well, I have, and when you get in those situations, you do try to balance that concept of how do we play to win, but at the same time do the things that we need to keep the other team from just doing what they do well. So much like what Drew's talking about, it's the dilemma you face. And then ultimately, as coaches, or at least my philosophy is, we have to do what we do and not worry about what they do, because more times than not that doesn't work. That ball control, it's like the stall offense in basketball where you're trying to keep the other team from getting the ball. It relates to football as well, and it speaks to your confidence in your kids, and they feed off of that, is what I've found. And we just have, we've been in games this season where it's hard for me. We want to go fast-paced, and we'll try to slow it down to grind out some clock, and we start making mistakes because it's not the pace that we play at. So we'll just keep our pace going because that's what the kids are comfortable with. So depending on the program and the philosophy of the coach, sometimes that can work to try to ball control things. But if that's not what you do, sometimes that can be a challenge for your kids. They're still high school kids that are trying to make plays for you.
Yeah, you guys aren't in the Little 10 conference anymore, but have you still followed how the LTC is going this year?
Not a lot. Just like when we came into the Big 11, I had no idea what anybody does. I don't want to say I don't pay attention to football across the state, but we spend a lot of time paying attention to our opponents and what's going on in our league. So I know that Foxcroft's had a great season over there in Bucksport, Dexter, and some of the Madden-Ockwick's having a decent season. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I know Foxcroft's a really talented football team. And
you played that team as well.
We did, and they were tough. They've got a quarterback and some receivers and a running back and just a swarming defense that's pretty good. So they've got to be a favorite over there, but never count out Bucksport with Coach Sankey and those guys. And Dexter's been coming on strong. Andy Shorey was a guy that played for me, and I talked with I've talked with over the coaches clinics, and it sort of feels like it's almost Dexter's time, and so those would be probably the three teams I'd see, at the forefront over there. And same thing with Mananock Academy. You can never count them out. So,
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to do it for us this week on Gridiron Gurus. Whatever games you get out to this weekend, enjoy them. And be sure to check out centralmaine.com for our coverage of all high school sports. We've got these high school football playoff games coming up this weekend, as well as state championship games in soccer on Saturday. So for Drew, for Coach Bertrand, I'm Travis. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Gridiron Gurus.